Hey there, this is the Top Floor Please podcast, where women in leadership rise together. I'm your host, Melissa McCormick, executive coach and founder of the Grace and Salt Leadership Academy. This is your space to find clarity, grow in confidence, and lead with bold authenticity. Whether you're navigating the boardroom, building your team, or stepping into new territory, you're not alone. Let's talk real challenges, real growth, and real leadership, because the top floor isn't just a place, it's a mindset. All right, let's get started.
All right. Hello, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us today. This is the Top Floor, Please podcast and YouTube channel for Grace and Salt Leadership Academy. But you already know that because you've already heard the intro. All right. So today we're going to be talking about leading like a CEO, even before you have the title. And we'll talk a little bit about why that is important. But here's the truth. The truth is that leadership isn't about the title or your email signature. It's about how you show up every day. That is what it's all about. So I want to start by busting a myth I hear all the time. Once I get the title, then I'll start acting like a leader. Like, how can I say those things? How can I act in that manner? Like, who am I? Right? So sometimes we play small. Sometimes we play like, well, I don't, it's not my job. It's not my role. It's not who I am. It's not my identity in the organization. And that is just really the opposite way than what we should be saying, how we should be responding and how we should be acting, right? It's backwards. The best leaders that I've coached didn't wait for permission. They started leading right where they were, even when they were individual contributors or managers buried in the middle, right? They continually showed up and they continually led. Think about it. The title doesn't magically give you confidence, strategy, or vision, right? Those things are developed through intentional leadership long before anyone hands you a corner office or a CEO title, right? So the real question is this: how can you start showing up like a CEO right now? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Right? So it's a bit of a mindset shift. I'm going to give you 3 shifts to start leaning into. And so I want you to choose one of them. That's your action item, one of your action items for today. So I want you to think about the big picture. So CEOs aren't just solving today's problems. They're seeing 5 steps ahead. They start asking, what are we really trying to accomplish here? What's the long-term impact of this decision? And they get curious about the business, about the metrics, about the strategy, even if it's not your lane. Now, I'm not saying, this is not what I'm saying. I want you to hear this loud and clear. I am not saying that you should throw your weight around, that you should walk around like you own the place and just, do your own thing. No. That is not what I'm saying. What I am saying is I want you to take a look at your own department, your own world, your own circle of influence. I realize that some people listening to this this podcast, they could be either an executive or they could be entry level. And regardless of where you are, you may not have access to the executives, but you definitely have access to your own world. So I want you to think big picture. And if that big picture means your circle of influence, your department, your team, that's great. But think about it and ask that question. What are we really trying to accomplish here? That starts the strategic thinking. And that's what our bosses are looking for. They're looking for employees that can think strategically. And that means thinking beyond the day-to-day, thinking about where do we want to be and how do we get there. That's what thinking big picture means. The second one is I want you to own your influence. Right? Many of us think small and we're like, oh, yeah, but who am I? I'm just, I'm straight out of college. Who am I? Or I've worked here for many, many years, but I'm, in middle management, or I'm an individual contributor and I do a great job, but I'm just here shipping equipment to South America, which is, my history for those of you who know me. Right? But you don't need a title to influence people. Influence comes from trust. It comes from clarity, and it comes from consistency. So speak up in meetings, share your perspective, encourage others, right? Let's be collaborative. So I had a woman years ago, years and years ago. I don't even want to count how many years ago it was, but her name was Sandy. And she said to me, Melissa, when you have that feeling in your gut, honestly, at the time, I didn't even know we literally have a gut. I knew about gut instincts and I knew about all what that meant, but I didn't know there literally is a gut inside of our bodies. Anyway, when you get that feeling that you should be speaking up and you get that feeling in your stomach, like in the pit of your stomach, in your gut, you should, right? That's your instincts. That's your intuition saying, I really need to speak up here. Do it. Do not wait. Do not wait till after the meeting and then share it with a colleague or with your boss, because you've missed the opportunity for two things. You've missed the opportunity to share something that would move the initiative along, but you've also missed the opportunity for others to see that you really know what you're talking about, right? And building that personal brand. So CEOs create momentum by showing up with presence, even in the hallway or on Zoom. Now that Zoom piece of it will be a totally different podcast, because I do want to talk to everybody about how to show up on Zoom, right? Anyway, I won't get into it here, but that is something that is very important, and many of us overlook it. Okay, so here we go. Number one, think big picture. Number two, own your influence. And number three, make decisions like a leader. Start making decisions with intention. Ask yourself, what would the CEO consider here? What's best for the business, the team, the client? When you practice this consistently, people start to see you as a leader because you're already leading. Now, I used to ask two questions when I was in corporate and someone would come to my office with a decision that needed to be made. And it was really easy, and we'll talk about this in future podcasts, but it was really easy to make the decision for them. But in order to teach people how to lead at all levels, they needed to make the decision themselves. Really, they knew the answer. They just strictly wanted validation from the boss, right? So what I would ask them is I'd ask them two questions. I'd say, number one, is it good for the customer? If the answer is yes, you move on. The second question is it good for the company? If the answer is yes, you move on, you do it, you go for it. Because if it's good for the customer and it's good for the company, then it's good for you, the employee, right? Now, if the answer is no, like it's not good for the customer, you do not move on. You go back to the drawing board and you say, okay, how can I make this good for the customer? How can I make this very good for them and for the company, right? If it's good for the customer, not good for the company, you still may do it. It just really depends on the situation. So those are the three overarching mindset shifts that I want you to think about. And I want you to choose one. Think big picture, own your influence, meaning speak up in meetings, and make decisions like a leader. So there's a few tangible habits that I coach women to build even before they have the title. The first one is this. I want you to block CEO time. What does that mean? Like, I'm not a CEO and I don't have time to block time. You know what? I got all the things going on. There's this whirlwind of life going on. How in the world do you think I am going to block my CEO time? Well, guess what? If you don't block the time, you will never take the time. You must prioritize CEO time. And what that means is that's time where you're going to spend strategically thinking. Now, are you going to be thinking about big picture for the company overall? No, you're going to be thinking about your circle of influence. And that could be just you personally. That could be like your career plan. It could be your position. Like, what does this position look like? Am I honoring the position the way that I'm operating today? Is there a better way to do it? Is there a different way to do it? Am I going to look at the team dynamics? Am I going to look bigger, right? What is your role and what is your position in the organization? So you're going to carve out 30 to 60 minutes. 60 minutes I know is a lot. So I would say 30, 45 minutes, carve that out for strategic thinking. Now, use a time where you can really check out. So that might be Monday afternoons. That might be Friday afternoons, right? Choose a time when your boss is not going to be bothering you, or you don't have a lot of that rotating door like we used to say, if you're in an office setting or your team's messaging isn't blowing up, right? So choose a time on your calendar that makes a lot of sense. But I want you to carve out this amount of time. And you may have to leave your office, right? Because there's too many distractions. If you're like me, you're looking all over your desk and then you're like, oh, I forgot to do this. And oh, I forgot to do that. So you do it. Research shows that when you mess up like that, meaning when you're focused on one thing and you get distracted with something else, then it takes you 15, 20, 25 minutes to get back into where you were at. So you've lost productivity. So you want to go someplace that you are going to be proactive. But I want you to use that time to zoom out, like zoom out of your role, of your department, of whatever you're responsible for. I want you to plan ahead. I want you to tackle a tough challenge, not earth shattering, but just take a challenge and let's resolve it. Let's solve it. Let's find a new way, whatever it might be. That time, by having it on your calendar, it signals to you and to others that you're just not reacting, right? You're leading. You want to be proactive. Now, also, you need to communicate with your team, your colleagues, your boss, whoever it is, that time is you can call it what you want. You do not have to call it CEO time if you don't want it to show up in your calendar and people will think, well, who does she think she is? No. You don't have to call it that. You can call it strategy time. I think that would be a really good name, but make sure that you tell people about it so that they are not bothering you during that time, unless there's an emergency, right? So the first one is blocking CEO time. So these are CEO habits that you can practice right now. I want you to build relationships across the business. That's number 2. Great CEOs, they don't lead in silos. Right? They build relationships across departments, whether maybe you're in the order entry department and you need to know the warehouse person, or you need to know the production person, or you need to know the sales manager, or you need to know accounting, whoever you need to know. And it could be internally or externally, by the way. This is the time when you're sitting down with your CEO time, then I want you to think about that. Who are the relationships that I need? Because when you do that, your perspective widens and your leadership deepens, right? Okay, so block CEO time, build relationships across the business. Third is I want you to speak with confidence and clarity. You do not need to be the loudest voice in the room, but you do need to use your voice. Practice sharing your thoughts concisely and confidently. You don't have to apologize for having ideas. CEOs don't apologize for having their ideas. You do need to use your voice. So speak with confidence and clarity. And the only way to gain that confidence is to continually try it, right? I had a coach, her name was Diane. Years ago, I was very fortunate for my organization to invest in me and purchase a coaching program for me. And so Diane used to say, okay, Melissa, I want you to speak up. So believe it or not, I was intimidated by this one lady in our organization. She was a COO, and she spoke in terms that I had no idea about. Now, should I have reached out to her and said, I don't understand cost standard hours. I don't understand blah, 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 blah. Can you teach me? Yes, I should have. But I was so intimidated by her. 2 reasons. 1, I was intimidated by her. And 2, I thought that I should have known it and I don't know it. And I was not comfortable being vulnerable, which was wrong. I should have done that, but I didn't. So I would go into these meetings and they'd be talking over my head and I'd have ideas, but I was too chicken to say anything. So my coach had said to me one time, Melissa, I want you to go into that meeting and I want you to speak up. I don't even care what you say, but I want you to speak up and I want you to see what happens. So I did. The next meeting, I'm like, okay, I've got that. I got that pit in my stomach. I've got that feeling in my gut. I need to speak up. So I spoke up. And there was crickets. Like nobody said anything. And I'm thinking, okay, I know I spoke English. I know I spoke out loud. Like I know I heard my voice. So what is happening here? Right? And then a few minutes later, somebody else said basically the same thing I said. And it was the best thing since sliced bread. Right? I was not happy, but I was proud of myself that I spoke up. So I went back to Diane and I said, okay, I spoke up, but here's what happened. And as far as I'm concerned, it crashed and burned. She goes, no. You spoke up. You're going to do it again. So I want you to write it down. And I want you to to write down the reaction. How did they react? How did you feel? What was it like? And I want you to keep doing it and keep doing it until it becomes second nature, and until it becomes where you're speaking with confidence and clarity. The possibility is that the first time I spoke up, maybe I had a weak voice. Maybe it was shaky. I don't exactly remember, but it wasn't confident because nobody responded. Maybe they thought I was going to cry because maybe my voice was shaky. I don't know. But speak with confidence and clarity means that if you don't today, you're not going to automatically do it because you say so. You need to practice. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to practice. I want you to take ownership. When something goes wrong, own it. When something goes right, share the credit. This humility and accountability, that's the CEO energy, right? It's all about humility and accountability. All right, so here's what I want you to leave with today. You don't have to wait for a title to lead like a CEO. You are the leader right now. And every meeting, every decision, every moment is an opportunity to practice showing up that way. You're closer than you think. And when you start leading from that place, people notice. Promotions happen. Opportunities open. And more importantly, you grow into the leader you're meant to be. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is our first episode, and I'm just thrilled to be here. I'm looking forward to the next one and continuing to grow on this. If you're interested at all about Grace and Salt Leadership Academy, please send me a DM, send me an email, send me a text, whatever it is. You can find us on the internet and on social media. But the Esther Project does open May 12th. We're accepting applications right now, and that's for women who need to find their voice, right? And they're driven. They want to make more of an impact in their organization, but they either don't know what that is, or they just don't know how, or they're really struggling with communication, or they're struggling because they have so much on their plate. They're having a really, really hard time prioritizing things and prioritizing themselves, quite frankly. So we've had, this is our fourth cohort. We've had some really great ladies that have come through it. And I hope you will join us as well. And let's see. Lastly, I would like you to share this podcast. So go to wherever you're listening and share it, download it, make comments, do that so that the algorithm then brings it to more and more people. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for hanging out on the top floor. If today's episode gave you something to think about or a little boost, share it with your friend and keep the momentum going. And hey, if you're ready to find your voice and lead with clarity and confidence, check out the Esther Project. It's our foundational program at Grace and Salt, and it's built for women like you who are ready to rise. You can learn more at graceandsaltleadership.com. I'll drop the link in the show notes. And remember, you don't have to lead like everyone else, just lead like you. All right, I'll see you next time.